The white stork is a large bird in the stork family Ciconiidae. Its plumage is mainly white with black on its wings. Adults have long red legs and long pointed red beaks, and measure on average 100 to 115 centimeters from beak tip to end of tail, with a 155 to 215 centimeters wingspan. The two subspecies, which differ slightly in size, breed in Europe, northwestern Africa, southwestern Asia and southern Africa. The white stork is a long-distance migrant, wintering in Africa from tropical sub-Saharan Africa to as far south as South Africa, or on the Indian subcontinent. When migrating between Europe and Africa, it avoids crossing the Mediterranean Sea and detours via the Levant in the east to the Strait of Gibraltar in the west, because the air thermals on which it depends do not form over water. A carnivore, the white stork eats a wide range of animal prey, including insects, fish, amphibians, reptiles, small mammals and small birds. It takes most of its food from the ground, among low vegetation, and from shallow water. It is a monogamous breeder, but does not pair for life. Both members of the pair build a large stick nest, which may be used for several years. Each year the female can lay one clutch of usually 4 eggs, which hatch asynchronously 33-34 days after being laid. Both parents take turns incubating the eggs and both feed the young. The young leave the nest 58 to 64 days after hatching, and continue to be fed by the parents for a further 7 to 20 days. The white stork has been rated as least concern by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. It benefited from human activities during the Middle Ages as woodland was cleared, but changes in farming methods and industrialization saw it decline and disappear from parts of Europe in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Conservation and reintroduction programs across Europe have resulted in the white stork resuming breeding in the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland and Sweden. It has few natural predators, but may harbor several types of parasite. The plumage is home to chewing lice and feather mites, while the large nests maintain a diverse range of mesostigmatic mites. This conspicuous species has given rise to many legends across its range, of which the best known is the story of babies being brought by storks. Taxonomy and evolution. The white stork was one of the many bird species originally described by Linnaeus in the landmark 1758 10th edition of his Systema Naturae, where it was given the binomial name of Ardea ciconia. It was reclassified to the new genus Ciconia by French zoologist Matthieu-Jacques Brisson in 1760. Both the genus and specific epithet, Ciconia, are the Latin word for stork, originally recorded in the works of Horace and Ovid. The Latin word survives in most Romance languages. The word stork is derived from the Old English word stork, and appeared in the 10th century works the Erfurt Glossary, where the word is equated with Ciconia and Iofrix homilis. The word is related to the Old High German stora, stork, and similar words in many other European languages, all of which are descended from the Germanic sterkozed. There are two subspecies, cc. Ciconia, the nominate subspecies described by Linnaeus in 1758, breeds from Europe to northwest Africa and westernmost Asia, and in southern Africa, and winters mainly in Africa south of the Sahara Desert, though some birds winter in India. C. Asiatica, described by Russian naturalist Nikolai Sevetsov in 1873, breeds in Turkestan and winters from Iran to India. It is slightly larger than the nominate subspecies. The stork family contains 6 genera in 3 broad groups: the open-billed and wood storks, the giant storks, and the typical storks, Ciconiidae. The typical storks include the white stork and 6 other extant species, which are characterized by straight pointed beaks and mainly black and white plumage. Its closest relatives are the larger, black-billed oriental white stork of East Asia, which was formerly classified as a subspecies of the white stork, and the maguari stork of South America. Close evolutionary relationships within Ciconiidae are suggested by behavioral similarities and, biochemically, through analysis of both mitochondrial cytochrome B gene sequences and DNA hybridization. A Ciconiidae fossil representing the distal end of a right humerus has been recovered from Miocene beds of Ruinga Island, Lake Victoria, Kenya. The 24 to 6 million-year-old fossil could have originated from either a white stork or a black stork, which are species of about the same size with very similar bone structures. The Middle Miocene beds of Maboko Island have yielded further remains. Description: the white stork is a large bird. It has a length of 100 to 115 centimeters and a standing height of 100 to 125 centimeters. The wingspan is 155 to 215 centimeters and its weight is 2.3 to 4.5 kilograms. Like all storks, it has long legs, a long neck and a long straight-pointed beak. The sexes are identical in appearance, except that males are larger than females on average. The plumage is mainly white with black flight feathers and wing covers. The black is caused by the pigment melanin. The breast feathers are long and shaggy, forming a ruff which is used in some courtship displays. The irises are dull brown or gray, and the periorbital skin is black. The adult has a bright red beak and red legs, the coloration of which is derived from carotenoids in the diet. In parts of Spain, studies have shown that the pigment is based on astaxanthin obtained from an introduced species of crayfish, and the bright red beak colors show up even in nestlings, in contrast to the duller beaks of young white storks elsewhere. As with other storks, the wings are long and broad, enabling the bird to soar. In flapping flight, its wing beats are slow and regular. It flies with its neck stretched forward and with its long legs extended well beyond the end of its short tail. It walks at a slow and steady pace with its neck upstretched. In contrast, it often hunches its head between its shoulders when resting. Molting has not been extensively studied, but appears to take place throughout the year, with the primary flight feathers replaced over the breeding season. Upon hatching, the young white stork is partly covered with short, sparse whitish down feathers. This early down is replaced about a week later with a denser coat of woolly white down. By 3 weeks, the young bird acquires black scapulars and flight feathers. On hatching, the chick has pinkish legs, which turn to grayish-black as it ages. Its beak is black with a brownish tip. By the time it fledges, the juvenile bird's plumage is similar to that of the adult, though its black feathers are often tinged with brown, and its beak and legs are a duller brownish red or orange. The beak is typically orange or red with a darker tip. The bills gain the adult's red color the following summer, although the black tips persist in some individuals. Young storks adopt adult plumage by the second summer. Similar species within its range, the white stork is distinctive when seen on the ground. The winter range of C. asiatica overlaps that of the Asian open-bill, which has similar plumage but a different bill shape. When seen at a distance in flight, the white stork can be confused with several other species with similar underwing patterns, such as the yellow-billed stork, great white pelican and Egyptian vulture. The yellow-billed stork is identified by its black tail and a longer, slightly curved yellow beak. The white stork also tends to be larger than the yellow-billed stork. The great white pelican has short legs which do not extend beyond its tail, and it flies with its neck retracted, keeping its head near to its stocky body, giving it a different flight profile. Pelicans also behave differently, soaring in orderly, synchronized flocks rather than in disorganized groups of individuals as the white stork does. The Egyptian vulture is much smaller, with a long wedge-shaped tail, shorter legs and a small yellow-tinged head on a short neck. The common crane, which can also look black and white in strong light, shows longer legs and a longer neck in flight. Distribution and habitat. The nominate race of the white stork has a wide although disjunct summer range across Europe, clustered in the Iberian Peninsula and North Africa in the west, and much of Eastern and Central Europe, with 25% of the world's population concentrated in Poland, as well as parts of Western Asia. The Asiatica population of about 1450 birds is restricted to a region in Central Asia between the Aral Sea and Xinjiang in western China. The Xinjiang population is believed to have become extinct around 1980. Migration routes extend the range of this species into many parts of Africa and India. Some populations adhere to the eastern migration route, which passes across Israel into eastern and central Africa. A few records of breeding from South Africa have been known since 1933 at Calitzdorp, and about 10 birds have been known to breed since the 1990s around Bredasdorp. A small population of white storks winters in India and is thought to derive principally from the sea. Asiatica population, as flocks of up to 200 birds have been observed on spring migration in the early 1900s through the Kurram Valley. However, birds ringed in Germany have been recovered in western and southern India. An atypical specimen with red orbital skin, a feature of the oriental white stork, has been recorded, and further study of the Indian population is required. North of the breeding range, it is a passage migrant or vagrant in Finland, Great Britain, Iceland, Ireland, Norway and Sweden, and west of the Azores and Madeira. In recent years, the range has expanded into western Russia. The white stork's preferred feeding grounds are grassy meadows, farmland and shallow wetlands. It avoids areas overgrown with tall grass and shrubs. In the Chernobyl area of northern Ukraine, white stork populations declined after the 1986 nuclear accident there, as farmland was succeeded by tall grass shrubs. In parts of Poland, poor natural foraging grounds have forced birds to seek food at rubbish dumps since 1999. White storks have also been reported foraging in rubbish dumps in the Middle East, North Africa and South Africa. The white stork breeds in greater numbers in areas with open grasslands, particularly grassy areas which are wet or periodically flooded, and less in areas with taller vegetation cover such as forest and shrubland. They make use of grasslands, wetlands, and farmland on the wintering grounds in Africa. White storks were probably aided by human activities during the Middle Ages, as woodland was cleared and new pastures and farmland were created, and they were found across much of Europe, breeding as far north as Sweden. The population in Sweden is thought to have established in the 16th century after forests were cut down for agriculture. About 5,000 pairs were estimated to breed in the 18th century, which declined subsequently. The first accurate census in 1917 found 25 pairs, and the last pair failed to breed around 1955. The white stork is a rare visitor to the British Isles, as about 20 birds are seen in Britain every year, but there are no records of nesting. A pair nested atop St Giles High Kirk in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1416. A decline in population began in the 19th century due to industrialization and changes in agricultural methods. White storks no longer nest in many countries, and the current strongholds of the Western population are in Portugal, Spain, Ukraine, and Poland. In the Iberian Peninsula, populations are concentrated in the southwest, and have also declined due to agricultural practices. A study published in 2005 found that the Podhale region in the uplands of southern Poland had seen an influx of white storks, which first bred there in 1931 and have nested at progressively higher altitudes since, reaching 890 meters in 1999. The authors proposed that this was related to climate warming, and the influx of other animals and plants to higher altitudes. White storks arriving in Poznan province in western Poland in spring to breed its are some 10 days earlier in the last 20 years of the 20th century than at the end of the 19th century. Migration. Systematic research into migration of white stork began with German ornithologist Johannes Thienemann, who commenced ringing studies in 1906 at the Rossitten Bird Observatory, on the Curonian Spit in what was then East Prussia. Although not many storks passed through Rossitten itself, the observatory coordinated the large-scale ringing of the species throughout Germany and elsewhere in Europe. Between 1906 and the Second World War, about 100,000, mainly juvenile, white storks were ringed, with over 2,000 long-distance recoveries of birds wearing Rossitten rings reported between 1908 and 1954. Routes. White storks fly south from the summer breeding grounds in Europe in August and September, heading for Africa. There they spend the winter in savanna from Kenya and Uganda south to the Cape Province of South Africa. In these areas they congregate in large flocks which may exceed 1,000 individuals. Some diverge westwards into western Sudan and Chad, and may reach Nigeria. In spring, the birds return north. They are recorded from Sudan and Egypt from February to April. They arrive back in Europe around late March and April, after an average journey of 49 days. By comparison, the autumn journey is completed in about 26 days. Tailwinds and scarcity of food and water en route increase average speed. To avoid a long sea crossing over the Mediterranean, birds from Central Europe either follow an eastern migration route by crossing the Bosphorus to Turkey, traversing the Levant, then bypassing the Sahara Desert by following the Nile Valley southwards, or follow a western route over the Strait of Gibraltar. These migration corridors maximize help from the thermals and thus save energy. The eastern route is by far the more important, with 530,000 white storks using it annually, making the species the second commonest migrant there. The flocks of migrating raptors, white storks and great white pelicans can stretch for 200 kilometers. The eastern route is twice as long as the western, but storks take the same time to reach the wintering grounds by either. Juvenile white storks set off on the first southward migration in an inherited direction, but, if displaced from that bearing by weather conditions, they are unable to compensate, and may end up in a new wintering location. Adults can compensate for strong winds and adjust the direction to finish at the normal winter sites, because they are familiar with the location. For the same reason, all spring migrants, even those from displaced wintering locations, can find find the way back to the traditional breeding sites. An experiment with young birds raised in captivity in Kaliningrad and released in the absence of wild storks to show them the way revealed that they appear to have an instinct to fly south, although the scatter-in direction was large. Energetics. White stork rely on the uplift of air thermals to soar and glide the long distances of their annual migrations between Europe and sub-Saharan Africa. For many, the shortest route would take them over the Mediterranean Sea. However, since air thermals do not form over water, they generally detour overland to avoid the trans-Mediterranean flights that would require prolonged energetic wing flapping. It has been estimated that flapping flight metabolizes 23 times more body fat than soaring flight per distance travel. Thus, flocks spiral upwards on rising warm air until they emerge at the top, up to 1,200 to 1,500 meters above the ground. Long flights over water may occasionally be undertaken. A young white stork ringed at the nest in Denmark subsequently appeared in England, where it spent some days before moving on. It was later seen flying over St. Mary's, Isles of Scilly, and arrived in a poor condition in Madeira 3 days later. That island is 500 kilometers from Africa and twice as far from the European mainland. Migration through the Middle East may be hampered by the Khamsin winds, bringing gusty overcast days unsuitable for flying. In these situations, flocks of white storks sit out the adverse weather on the ground, standing and facing into the wind.